Hey guys, welcome to Little Blackbird 91. We're talking to you guys about why men tend to humble women, and we're also incorporating pretty privilege into that as well. This topic was based because I saw Damson Idris put out a post a couple of hours ago talking about how black men try to humble black women. And I thought, let me tackle it and see how we can actually answer this question. So let me give you a quick synopsis as to why I believe men try to humble women. Unfortunately, what happens with men, some men, is sexism, misogyny, patriarchy, entitlement, privilege, very, very big words to explain that sometimes men feel jealous and envious. Again, some words that maybe men don't necessarily like. Get envious of women who are pretty because what it signifies is the three I's: inferiority, intimidation, and invisibility. And when I explain it, it will make far more sense. Right now, I know some men who are listening to this are going to be like, F off, they don't believe me, they don't want to hear what I've got to say. But I want to keep it real and be real with you. Those are the baselines and the foundations of why men do what they do, right? Unfortunately, because of something like beauty, which has an ability to move and shift, meaning it allows the person to be able to procure resources from someone, some men feel like they're going to be taken advantage of and feel like that the woman has an undue advantage over them, and so they don't want to be played and they don't want to be taken advantage of, and so they reject that woman. So they almost want to get you before you get me. A lot of this comes from being wounded, because whenever you're in a space of I want to get you before you get me, it's because you've been got before, and so you're trying to get someone else before they get you. But that's just an overall summary of why I believe that happens. A lot of big words. I want to break it down in more simplified terms for both men and women to understand what's really going on. We're going to read a statement. I'll play a couple of clips as well for you guys just to bring it well-rounded. But if you're interested in this topic as to why men actually humble women, I've got about 8 points as to why they do it. Stick with this video. We like to entertain and educate, and we hope you guys will enjoy this content as well. If you're new to the channel, like, share, subscribe. Click on that bell button for notifications of the uploads. We appreciate you. And for those of you who are returning, to really know what it is, baby, you got the minerals. Don't forget, you can join the family. It's £1, $1. You can join us on YouTube, be a part of the Mineral Gang. We also have a Discord, which we also have great conversations about reality TV. And finally, if you want to be a part of the team, the merch is there as well. Don't be cold this winter. Grab your hoodie, grab your hat. Let's get into this conversation. Why do men want to humble women? And especially I'm talking about specifically pretty privilege tied into that. Why is it that men want to humble, especially pretty women, but women in general? Why is that? Well, there's 8 reasons I came up with. I won't go deep into it until later on in the video. Poor emotional regulation, no mastery of self, misogyny, entitlement, sexism, machoism, patriarchy, intimidation, inferiority, invisibility, and also insecurity when it comes to who you are as a man, and also not being able to meet the demand of the beauty that person carries, because beauty has a demand, it requests. And that's why we have a thing called what we call beauty currency. Why when women, or beauty capital, why women will go and do their whole body and do a BBL. The reason is because they understand how beauty is able to withdraw capital or withdraw currency from not only males, but the male dominated society that we live in. Right? So men, and I think that's 7 points, but anyway, but men who fight to humble women, oftentimes there's an issue within themselves in terms of how they see themselves, how they interact with the world, and the fact that they can't actually attain what they're getting, because anger is a self-defense mechanism. It's kind of like, quote unquote, a self-defense emotion, right? And in a sense, while we get angry because we're trying to show the world that there's a frustration that we're not able to get to a certain point, right? It signifies to other people, don't mess with me. But it also signifies too when there's a frustration that you can't reach a goal, or you're being hindered to reach a destination. So when men get angry and they begin to try and humble women, there's often jealousy and envy behind it too, and the frustration, the fact that they can't tap into the access women of their choice and their desire. Why do I say this? There's a key term called intra-sex competition. Intersex competition, what it means in a sense, is between genders, or between sex, I should say better, right? Women and women, men and men. They compete for resources. Both of them compete for the same type of resources. Men compete for food, shelter, and then they compete for the access to women, right? And women compete for food and shelter and access to men. But it's done in different ways. So when women are trying, what women have that attracts men is their age, their appearance, their youthfulness, their ability to have kids. That attracts men, right? Whereas women are looking for security, safety, and stability, and they look for that in finances, resources, your wealth, your power, your status. They look for that in a man, right? So different things that attract each particular sex. And what happens within each sex, they're having competition to see who can be the baddest of the baddest, the biggest of the biggest, the best of the best. Women do this fight between each other because they understand that personally they may be quote unquote limited resources, right? And this is where men on the other side, when you want to call it manosphere, red pill, they talk about this 80-20 rule, which is actually a book, which is a pretty good book, by the way. And they talk about the fact that only 20% of men are actually being seen, and the 80% of men are not getting seen. Now, if you are part of the 80% who are not getting seen, you're part of what I mean by this, the 3 I's: intimidation, inferior, and invisibility. They can easily collect you if you're part of the 80% because you're frustrated about being part of the 80%. So who's the 20%? The men who have power, wealth, and status immediately show up. When you're in a space somewhere, those who are good looking immediately show up. Those who have money pretend and immediately show up. Those who have wealth or status immediately show up. You know of them because they're famous. You know because he has money. You know because he's good looking. Those 3 things, they show up really, really quickly. So women are able to spot them really, really quickly and go after those resources because they're evident. The rest of the men frustratingly have to work to be seen. And that can cause some frustration, but I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit there, but I want to bring that into play. So intra-sex competition, women are competing amongst other women. This is where female rivalry kicks in, and they don't compete directly the same way men do, right? Men tend to compete directly, and then they have to fight, not let's say always sort of literally with fist to fist, but they fight directly, and what they aim to hit is their economical strength and hit their economical strength, and their physicality, right? So that's where they hit and where they compete. With women, where they compete is in the fact that their youthfulness, their age, their beauty, in a sense, their appearance, their attractiveness. And in amongst that, how they fight is that women tend to do it very passive aggressively and indirectly. And the reason being is because if your value, according to the opposite sex of what they want access to through you, is through your beauty, get into a fight ain't gonna help you, baby. Okay, because you need to stay looking good. And so if your face all busted up, men don't want you, right? And also, secondly, it also is a preventive measure for women because they have wombs. And the wombs is also a part of their attractiveness because men want to what? Procreate. So the women, of course, as well. But you want to have legacy, you want to have generations after you, you want to procreate. And so a woman getting into a fight, potentially able to hurt herself and hurt her womb and hurt her body, which is all a part of her attractiveness, no siree. So she learns how not to fight. Also, being in a male-dominated society, you can't fight the person who's stronger than you face to face, hand to hand, because you wouldn't win. So what they've learned to also do is quote unquote manipulate and learn how to twist the arm of the stronger person to be able to fold and be able to do thy bid and do thy will, right? Again, I'm saying that loosely, but that's also a part of why men tend to want to humble women. They have a negative outlook on women, and they believe that every woman is trying to twist the arm of a man and get them to do what they want them to do. And the men are afraid that they are going to be taken advantage of because those women who have beauty, men surrender and submit to the beauty in some shape or form. And so if she can get a hold of me, I'm scared of what she can elicit in me. And because I have no mastery of self, and I'm kind of doing all my points here, but because I'm not a master of myself, what happens is I shift and I move due to her beauty, Adam and Eve. And then I end up doing something that I shouldn't necessarily do, or I am in a space I shouldn't necessarily be, or be somewhere I shouldn't be, because her beauty has shifted and moved me. And men get angry about that, but they get angry about it because they don't have mastery of self, but also because they've seen it happen in their childhood, whether it's mums or dads, whether they blame their mum for their dad leaving, or whether they blame the fact that their dad is not strong in the home, or whether they feel like their mum runs the roost, whatever it is. They have some type of wound, which means that now they can't actually be able to allow women to be free. They've got to humble them because if I don't get you, you won't get me. I got to get you before you get me, right? Okay, so going back to what we're talking about, this pretty privilege aspect when it comes to men and trying to humble women, Pretty privilege, as a definition, it means being socially beautiful by society standards and having more advantage and opportunities compared to those who are deemed less attractive. Pretty privilege is also what causes women to have fights amongst themselves, because women compete with other women. And one of the hardest things for women, and if you're a pretty person, you know this, when you come into a new workplace, when you come into new friendships, come to a new school, come to a new sports club, wherever you go, if you're pretty and considered to be pretty in the eyes of the men, remember, men are part of the resources that women are looking for. And what happens is you can be excluded from groups. You will realize that women try to humble you and try to make you co-equal when you're not equal. Women tend to do this female empowerment and be like, we're all tens. And you know that you ain't all tens. And the reality is not all men respond to you the same way, because not all women respond to men the same way, because not all men are tens, and not all men have money, not all men are 6 foot, whatever, right? They don't have all those qualities. But what women will do in their groups is they'll try to humble, okay, those other women. And I'm talking about the men in a second or two. Don't worry, I'm just wanting to bring this aspect. So in female groups, when women enter it, they'll try to humble them by saying, hey, we are all equal here. Let's be uniformed here. And we know they're not uniformed. Even the dresses that you wear, you can both be a size 8, but don't hit the same way. Okay? So pretty privilege is about having the advantages and opportunities compared to those less attractive. And that also pisses off men too, because the men who are struggling, and and let me not say struggling, because men try to humble women on all social economical levels. But oftentimes when you're looking at the social economical levels of that we see in the majority, it's because the majority don't have resources, right? But this happens on every level, and there are different reasons why. But let me take this particular reason. These men in the 80%, if you want to call it that, those men who describe this, right? They are frustrated because what they realize is they're priced out the market. The beautiful girl, the pretty girl, her beauty has a demand and a request, and you can't honor the demand or the request because you know that you don't have the resources to be able to procure her. And so you get frustrated by that. And what's also frustrating is because when it comes to what men and women are doing in the space, what men do, they fight to procure assets and resources. Women don't necessarily have to fight to procure assets and resources. They acquire resources because they just be. It's what we're talking about, the ultimate masculine and ultimate feminine. Masculine gives, feminine receives. And what has happened is there is a wound in a lot of these men who are broken and hurt. And what happens is they stepped off their square of being masculine and stepped into the feminine. And they believe that because they're seeing the women who are in their feminine receiving, they're frustrated because they're seeing women tap into other men. And by the way, men are jealous of other men too. They're jealous of men who are dominant in their field. They're frustrated because those women are not doing anything to procure resources. But I'm working so hard to procure resources and it's still not enough for you. That's where some men are losing it, because they don't have a good idea where they socially stand. And two, they're wounded or hurt, either from mom or from dad, whatever you want to call it. And that is now playing a role in the way they look at women, right? Experience, belief, attitude, perception. Those 4 words are important. What is your experiences of women? Right? What are your beliefs that are formed out of that experience? What is now your attitude towards women because of the beliefs that come from your experience? And what is now your perception of women according to what you've experienced, belief, and attitude? The perception is really important. And then we talk about the psychological term called halo effect, where we apply good attributes and good qualities to those who are beautiful. This affects both men and women, but I'm talking from the men liking the women. Halo effect is simply this, that we add good attributes to someone and we look for good attributes and qualities when we find them attractive or when they are conventionally attractive, and we perceive them in a good light, right? Because of their beauty. So we make a judgment based upon their physicality and add positive stuff. Why is this also important? Well, because that's perception, right? And that's why we're talking about the experience, belief, attitude, perception. But there's another thing called, within amongst of that vanity. The word vanity involved in this situation, which has ties to narcissism, socially constructed. People hate vanity and narcissism. So what happens is when women are beautiful conventionally, have pretty privilege, and the man has wounded, he perceives it erroneously and adds negative tropes to the woman if she does anything that is deemed to be negative to him. For instance, if he says hello and she's maybe didn't give him the right hello back. If he, says, can I talk to you? And she's like, I'm sorry, I've got a boyfriend. He now takes it in a bad way, right? Anything can trigger a very sensitive, wounded man, right? So what's happening is that then the perception of the woman becomes negative. And this can be formed out of sexism, misogyny, entitlement, machoism, you want to call it machiavenism. I think I'm saying, I don't know if I'm saying the right word. And that can play a role in it, or misogyny, if you want to call it the wrong misogyny. That plays a role in also perception that's based on experiences. Sexism, meaning that one believes that their sex is better than the other. This plays a huge role in why men want to humble women, because when men believe that women are better than them, i.e. they're confident, they're sexy, and they've got brains, and she can get her money up too, oh, you done. Why? Because as a gender, as a male, you are taught that from young, through sexism in tropes and ideas and media, that a man is supposed to be better than the woman. So when a woman can beat you in all facets, you get angry. Let me give you an example. I watch football or soccer, for those of you in America, and I've seen that women's soccer is also growing rapidly. But I also see the hate that these men have for women's soccer. When they put up a post about women's soccer, I see some of these men coming out of the woodwork saying, we don't care, and I realize it's because they're doing something that you can't do. Because you have a sexist idea of what women are. If you get vexed at a woman doing what the same thing a man does, right? And you reason in your head that you want to give more judgment to the woman, then what's going to happen is you are going to play into the sexist trope. You don't realize women have internalized sexism too, where they judge other women harshly for the same thing that a man would do and say, well, boys will just be boys, right? Okay, so I'm just giving a perspective to make it understandable. So what happens is sometimes these men can be sexist because they have an idea that men are better than women, and when the women beat them, they're like, whoa, I've experienced this myself when I was younger. I told you about this, the whole Scrabble game that I played with a girl. I can't believe she beat me at Scrabble. Because here's the thing. I said experience, belief, attitude, and perception is important in terms of when we're dealing with why men get to where they get to. But self-identity, experience, belief, value, and perception is also important. How do we identify ourselves socially? What makes a man socially? And so what happens is when a woman is able to do what a man can do, and I'm saying this when she's pretty, when she's confident, when she's smart as well, when she adds those things, suddenly she's a threat, because she's actually quote unquote, for you, you don't have the resources to match what she's bringing to the table. So you get angry, so you have to humble her. And the reason why you have to humble her is because you have to devalue her in order for you to be able to say, she's not my level. And you have to devalue her, because then then you can actually, in comparison, put yourself on a higher pedestal. It's actually something that women do to each other, by the way. By the way, what I'm talking about, women do this a lot to each other as well. It's called derogation and self-promotion. Derogation meaning that you put the other person down and devalue them, and you do that so that you can uplift yourself, right? So you might say this woman, you might hate on this woman for some reason because, oh, she's pretty, but you might make some excuse. Oh, she's not smart, or, she's dumb, or she looks like this, or she looks like that. And you make these derogations where you put them down. Well, men who are wounded tend to do this too. They do derogation to women, not to other men, but to women, and they derogate. And then they self-promote themselves like, I'm a nice guy. And women don't want me, but I'm a nice guy. I've got a job. I've got a business. I've got this. I've got that. I've got that. And they self-promote themselves while derogating what women do. Well, guess what? That's what women do to each other when they're competing with other women in order to procure resources from men, or resources from the environment, if you want to call it that, like your job or whatever. That's what they do with each other. That's why I said that the man is wounded, because you're operating in your feminine and you don't realize. Because that's what women do to each other, okay, when they're competing. So importantly, and then I was going to what Damson Idris actually was saying. He talked about the fact that I see so much unprovoked hatred towards black women today by predominantly grown black men, especially towards our young stars that are just trying to do their thing. The compulsion to humble women perhaps makes you feel like more of a man. I promise you aren't a man to us. A new year is approaching. Grow up. So I've touched on a few points. Another aspect for why men want to humble women is because they've not mastered themselves. And this is a two-pointer. They've not mastered themselves. And so when beauty enters a room, they're nervous. But they're nervous because they feel like they don't have the resources necessary to match what they're seeing, but also because they don't have good, very social skills, very awkward, and that ends up making them feel like they're invisible. intimidated or inferior. Now, men don't like the words inferior, intimidated. I totally understand that. And that's because, again, with men, reason why we don't like those words is because it links to feelings and vulnerability. And one thing that men who are not evolved in emotional intelligence struggle to do is feel like they're feeling vulnerable or feeling weak. And emotions, some of the emotions are tied to quote unquote weakness. For instance, crying, sadness, grief can be linked to weakness. And so we stay in the area of the realms of anger because anger is strong, because anger is what is violent. And so it's aggressive. It definitely ties into masculinity. It doesn't. Okay, emotions don't tie into anything. They are standalone. We use emotion. The Bible says, be angry, but sin not. Anger in itself isn't the issue. It's the action that comes from that anger. So what happens is a lot of men are afraid. Okay, let me go to my notes. A lot of men are afraid, and I'll tell you why. Invisible, intimidated, and inferior. Being invisible means incapable of nature of being seen and not perceptible by vision. One of the things that why men humble women is because they are invisible to these women. They have a previous wound from their childhood. And being made invisible twice in your lifetime is triggering. And so in order to be seen, which is kind of mad, it's a bit like when people do crimes and they felt invisible in their childhood, so they commit a crime and they want to be seen and they tell people what they're going to do because they want the chase and they want the detective to figure it out and give them notoriety. Same thing kind of happens here with women, is that you are invisible, so you humble a woman to be seen because you felt like you were invisible to her. Crazy, right? Intimidation, frightened, lacks confidence because of the people they are with or the situation they're in. Now, men don't like that term because what we're saying is that men hate certain emotions. They hate the feeling of being what? Fearful. If you tell a man you're afraid, they're, what? Man's not afraid. They instantly want to fight up because being afraid is linked to what? Vulnerability, and it's linked to what? Weakness. And vulnerability ties into weakness. But the Bible says that I may be weak. My strength is his strength is perfected as I am made to be weak. And that's Second Corinthians 12, where Paul talks about in my weakness, Christ is made strong. I may decrease so he may increase. John the Baptist said, your weakness is you submitting and knowing that there's a greater who can cover you. And so men don't like the feeling of being intimidated because it links to weakness. And I ain't no weak punk, because there are consequences for men being weak. They get tramped up, they get trampled upon, they get hurt, they get beaten up by other men, not necessarily just physically, but in terms of the social grouping. And so if I'm weak, men are going to pick it up and there's going to be no respect there. And if men don't respect other men, women don't respect other men. That's the problem with it too. That's why they struggle to be able to be emotional and present, because they realize that if I'm weak and I look weak to other men in certain social groupings of men, by the way, it's not all men. But if they look weak to other men, ask any woman if they want a man that's not respected by other men. They'll tell you straight. Now, bar that man, of course, has a respectable, and there's some type of, we're not talking about men that are respectable, but other men call them, let's say, for instance, I'm calling you a simp. We're not talking about that kind of situation. We're talking about where you are not respected by other men. Men look at you just like they treat you like the clown. They treat you like the bottom of the shoe. Men are trying to avoid that situation because women don't want those men. Okay, they might tell you, I want a leader, I want an alpha. Yeah. Okay. Last one is inferior, lower in rank, status, or quality. When a woman is beautiful and pretty, remember, her status goes up, her rank increases, her quality that she brings is increasing. And so what happens is some of these men who are wounded, they try to humble that woman because they feel inferior in her presence. They know that when they put their beauty against their beauty, they don't match up. People are going to look at them and ask them questions. Or when you have your resources, you can't even boast about your resources. So what does it look like? You want to humble her. You're angry at her, but really you're angry at you. You're angry at the woman, but you're actually angry at yourself. You're angry at yourself that you've not got what you need in order to stand tall and to stand side by side by this level of beauty. And I'm not saying this, to be a panderer. I'm telling you the psychology of what's happening in the mindset of these men, right? So if any man's listening, you want to say panderer and not actually, go through what I'm actually saying about, you're going to miss actually what's being said. So next thing I want to talk about is poor emotional regulation. If you don't know how to regulate yourself, express, understand, and process your emotions very well, you are likely to react to situations you shouldn't react to and be abnormally reactive to certain situations, right? So when you're not regulated in that space emotionally, things like people who are pretty and those who are attractive, when you can't express yourself, you feel stupid and feel silly. For instance, like when men have the little social awkwardness and and now you're angry at the fact that you're stuttering, you're angry that you're unable to communicate, you're angry that you're unable to procure because you don't know how to express yourself, the opposite sex, you don't have access to the opposite sex, you get frustrated. And if you don't know how to process and understand your emotions very well, you tend to act out of your emotions, even though you don't know your emotions very well, right? Especially people that don't know how to express themselves. I always say this, those who can't express themselves verbally tend to express themselves physically. And that humbling comes because you can't express yourself very well. You're broken, you're hurt, you're wounded, and you can't express yourself very well, that you're feeling these feelings. And instead of you just being real and saying, I'm insecure about the fact that you're making me feel that way because I know that your beauty is some type of grace, it moves me, it shapes me, I feel like it's controlling me. That's what it feels like. That I'm angry about that. But you can't voice that out. I understand, okay? Another thing is beauty is a reminder that they don't have the worth in order to compete. They don't have the worth in order to attain, which is what I said earlier on. And I said, obviously, pretty privilege allows the woman to make a demand that you can't meet that causes issues for you as well, right? So I'm gonna bring it to a close here. I definitely want to do another video about this, right? But I think when it comes to when men want to humble women, their biggest issue is you need to have self-mastery. You need to know where you stand in society. You need to know that you've got your purpose locked in, and you have to have some confidence in yourself. Look, at the end of the day, there are going to be people that are going to be outside of your market. Do you know how men trying to humble women, or pretty women specifically, I want to talk about, it's like when poor folk try to humble rich folk. This is what happens. The same thing. You have a jealous and an envious of rich people, and you instantly have a negative perception of them because you are feeling some type of way because of your own experience. Oh, all rich people are stuck up. All rich people don't have no problems. Oh, rich people this, that. And you say negative things about rich people because you have an experience of being in a place where you have not strived to get to where they are. Oh, they have it easy. It's the same thing as men and women. What is it? They have it easy. Oh, you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Oh, Kylie Jenner, she's a millionaire, but she had it easy. Look at her start. This is not easy being a millionaire. It's not easy being a billionaire. It's not easy, even if you have money, to make more money. It's still not easy. You need to have wisdom and have ingenuity. If it was easy, you would have done it already, right? But that's how men will treat women because they're wounded. And poor people can be wounded too because they're angry at their situation, right? And so the same way as men, they're angry at the situation and they blame the wrong person. My last final point is this. There's a thing in psychology that talks about, is it the two workers who are fighting for a job? Is it their issue? Is it them that's the problem? Or is it the boss who told them that you need to fight against each other? And oftentimes the two employees are fighting each other, not realizing the actual issue is the man at the top. Now that's probably a feminist point, but I thought I'd bring it to the table because I think it makes great perspective as well. So hopefully I didn't talk too fast. I felt like I was talking quite at speed, but you got something out of this, right? So we're going to break it down some more in the next video as well. So like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification of uploads. We appreciate you guys.